Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Hi, and welcome back to the When Stories podcast. I'm Lisa Condon, certified facilitator for When Stories out of Nashville, Tennessee. Today, I am joined with the beautiful Wonder Wendy. And Wonder Wendy just had her talk. She did it earlier this year in Nashville, and it just premiered this week. So excited to talk with her this morning. So, Wonder Wendy, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Introduce myself is always a challenge to me, to be honest with you, because I feel like I've had such a rich life. I need David Copperfield to sum up my entire life. But in this most recent chapter, I am exploring reinvention and sharing that with the world with podcasts called The Imperfect Prophet and living the what I call wonder hyphen full bucket list life.
I love it. And you talked about that in your When story, which will attach at the end of this so people can watch that. But when you came up with this podcast and you really wanted to step into this space, just give us a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a glimpse of how that came to be.
I won't repeat the story that's in Wen's story. I'm going to tell you a story that I haven't told you anytime recently, if I have told you it at all. For a long time, I'd had this itch that there was something I needed to do. And I actually made a few short videos on my phone that all started with what I've learned at this time. And I never really went anywhere with it. But I had a feeling, I had a sense, and I didn't really know about this whole podcast thing. So I think the seeds were just waiting for the right conditions to explode. Oh, I'm back to seeds again, too. So
I love it. I love it. No, that's great. And so when we think about your podcast and we think about the work that you're doing and where people can ultimately find you, tell us a little bit about you and what you are doing from a business perspective and where people can kind of pull you into the work that they're doing.
well, I try and stay very active on social media because I feel the best way to model the wonderful bucket list life and encourage other people to do likewise is to live out my life in public.
Mm.
So in my social media, you'll see what I'm doing in the art world, in the fashion world, in the volunteer world, community service, all the things that make up what I'm doing. Because as I do say in the When speech, the wonderful bucket list life is not about a list of things you do before you die. It's a list that keeps growing and adds value to the life you're going to live.
Mm, so rich. I love that.
But
And
then
so,
to the business part,
yeah, yes.
um, that is still in development. I have a website, Wonder Wendy and Friends, which was my original incarnation as a business, and that's what my DBA is. Um, Before the Imperfect Prophet was even conceived. So that is houses where you can see the books I've collaborated on. You can see my podcasts. I do my best to work with my web developers so you can see upcoming events, but we're still perfecting that. And we're also developing a speaker page, which is kind of under construction at this point in time, because I would love to come and talk to people's organizations and share this message about living a full life. And it is so geared in my mind towards women of a certain age, what I call queenagers, that we are no longer young people, but we're not allowing ourselves to get old. We're still living rich, full lives, and we have so much to offer the world. What I've discovered is some really interesting things is that this message works for younger people because they can see the trajectory they want to follow beyond I need to, the house, the car, the 2.5 children, the dog, whatever is your vision for your life. Let's look beyond that and see what I want to say at the end of my life. What do I want my children to say about me or my peers to say about me? What legacy am I leaving? And I think that what I'm modeling is that for younger people as well.
Oh, I would completely agree. And I love watching your social media and you do something that's really smart on your social media because you don't show people where you're at currently. You go back a couple of weeks and you kind of bring people along for the ride. And I really love that because it engages us in the story. And, I love. Sometimes I say to my husband, where in the world is Wendy now? Because you just don't know where she might have popped up, which is great.
It's another reason you can call me Wonder Wendy, because you can wonder where I am and what I'm doing today.
There you go. Oh, I love that. So you talk about that you want to go in and be speaking at different organizations. I'm assuming nonprofit, for profit, like that part doesn't matter. It's really about the message. Are you also doing panel discussions, moderating? Like tell people a little bit more about some of the speaking engagements that you've been involved in and what you continue to want to be involved in.
I've actually worked a great deal with an organization here in Phoenix that promotes fashion and development, and I've done a lot of panels with them on such diverse topics. It's fascinating to me what they'll call me in for. I moderated a panel on tech and fashion in the movies, and I looked at them going, "You do know this isn't my specialty, right?" And they said, "Yeah, but you bring this overview." And if that wasn't about me talking, that was about invoking stories from others.
Mm,
And my style lends itself well to saying, okay, now I hear what you're saying. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I do force them to explain because I don't understand their science. So
I,
that's one place where I've done a lot of work with that particular organization. Obviously nonprofits are a lot of fun because you are seeding your community, you are growing your community. These are the people that are making our society a better structure.
mhm.
But where I'd really love to get in is the for profit, because we have to remember to play and to live into our creativity. We've become so goal focused that we forget our humanity. I recently had a woman explain to me, she said, "You need marigolds in your vegetable garden." And I kind of looked at her like, she had three heads because I didn't understand her initially. And what the marigolds do is they attract pollinators, so your plants grow more healthy. And they also have a natural tendency that drives away pests and other things.
Mhm.
So they serve a multitude of purposes. And it also just makes it more pleasant to work in the garden.
Mhm.
So don't forget, when you're planting your vegetable garden, yes, it's about having crop and it's about having yield and having food to eat, but it's also has other characteristics that need to be there for the health and vitality of the worker and the garden.
Mm. I love it. Love it so much. It's funny, I talk about the foundational garden and what you're talking about. I think it truly resonates. And people do forget. People absolutely forget. And when you talk about the goal setting and being so focused on KPIs and getting to that next, they forget the moments of now and how to play. And yes, I love all of that. Okay, so you've done a lot of speaking, you've engaged in a lot of different ways. How was When Stories different for you?
It was all about me. Again, that whole goal driven society. Normally, you have somebody saying, we're going to address world hunger, sexism, whatever it might be. We're going to address this huge, weighty topic. And that wasn't what it was about. This was about a personal journey and modeling that so that other people could hear and resonate. And that was huge and scary. And I probably could have done half the speech with fewer topics and done it in 10 minutes. But the layers that built to that ending required all the twists and turns that led to the fact that I'm still standing despite the trials and tribulations that everybody faces in life.
Hmm.
And I want people to see that, because it's way too easy to focus on the negative and get lost in it and sucked down, instead of saying, look, today I cleaned a junk drawer and maybe that's all I got done today, but I cleaned that junk drawer.
Hmm.
And whether it's little victories or big victories, we need to celebrate ourselves and be confident in that.
Mm, I kind of want you to say that again.
But I can never say the same exact thing
I
twice.
know, no, but celebrate
That's what happens.
ourselves and be confident in that. I think so many people need to hear that.
Even
Um,
I need to hear that, as you know. I
mhm,
mean, I have days when I forget that message and the weight of the world becomes so much and it's so hard to deal with. I
mhm,
actually I let that out in the podcast that's going to drop this next week. So I had a moment of vulnerability in my podcast because usually these messages are well structured and I start with a story and I have a message and I have a lesson learned and it all happens in there. And this past week, I just kind of went, there's something else I need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about how I ended up crying and it hurt and life sucked. And so know that even I, who am, for want of a better word, preaching this stuff, occasionally need to hear my own words.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think we all do at times. So, with the process for When Stories and your talk and the fact that it was different because it was all about you and not about everybody else, was the process of developing your talk or even how you prepared different than other talks that you have done?
Yes, because a lot of what I talked about was information that is usually guarded.
Mm,
We pocket off certain stories in our life, certain parts we don't want to visit again, we don't want to address. They're uncomfortable, they're scary, or maybe we just soon forget it ever happened.
hmm
And going through the process and working through it, realizing that telling these stories might help other people and also uncovering that made it a little more comfortable for me,
mm,
but it wasn't easy by any measure. And I also had to be careful because the stories involved other people,
hmm
to not disparage other people. So it became about my perception of that moment,
hmm
not what they did, not what somebody did to me, but how did I navigate those moments in time?
hmm
And that's a little bit different because, again, we tend to structure things. You did this to me, and I did, you know, you made me feel this. Well, no, nobody makes you feel anything. This is how I felt.
mm,
So it was a real interesting unraveling of my experiences and lining them up in a very different way.
mm. So, what that tells me is perhaps as you were crafting your talk, it did it change over the course of, the preparation of you throughout your cohort and throughout your coaching? Did it change at all?
I think it changed just about every day for 8 weeks. Right up to the point that I was sitting backstage going, I'm not sure I want to say that. Or, oh my gosh, this is what has to be said.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting because I just got the transcript of what I actually said, and I just saw what I said for the first time on Wednesday night. And I was sometimes actually surprised at myself, like, oh, said that. That was interesting. That one line, which, in a weird way, if I'd known I was going to say this one line, it probably would actually be the title of the whole presentation. And that was, and I bet you even know what I'm thinking, death has lost its sting.
hmm hmm
That had never come out of my mouth until I was standing on that stage.
hmm
And yet that was the seminal message of everything,
hmm
that I was so, that realization in the when moment took me to a place where I was more afraid of not living life fully than of dying.
hmm
And that is really the person I am today.
hmm I remember standing in the audience watching you and listening to your talk. And obviously, leading up to it, I had heard variations of your talk. And like you said, you never know. Once you get on stage, you don't know what's coming out of your mouth sometimes. And I think that's completely okay. And I remember that line because there was that, like, that collective breath in the audience when you said that line. And I remember that very specifically. Okay, so you said Wednesday night, you watched your premiere. It was the first time you saw it. How did you feel?
I almost felt like I was watching somebody completely different. It was like, wow, is that really me? Is that really me? And we had a I broke your mold. I had a instead of a virtual viewing party, I had a live party at a beautiful venue in downtown Phoenix, and We had bottles of champagne to celebrate after the thing. We had a caterer in there with a gorgeous charcuterie. And instead of watching the Wen story on a cute little computer screen, it was projected on a 14-foot wall. It was huge. The first time you see your face 8 feet tall talking on a wall will blow your mind. I will guarantee that. And kudos to your camera people, because my skin looked flawless. Thank
Yes,
you
it
so
did.
much.
Yes, it did.
So, yes, there's the vanity aspect, but it's also just watching myself move and realizing, and also the room of people I was in, it was so silent because everybody was wrapped in the story. And having done stage work, when the room is dead silent, everyone is fully engaged in the story.
Mhm.
And that meant so much to me. There were a couple times when my friends would turn around and do a little, golf clap or something like that. And there's a part of the story where I talk about an interviewer and what happened in that scenario. He was in the room.
Oh, that's
So I turned and I looked at him and I'm like, that's you, that's you. And he goes, I know.
oh, that's so great. Oh my gosh, Wendy,
So it was amazing. And then when it was all done, they all said, we know you're a good speaker because we've heard you before, but we've never seen you like that before.
Mhm.
That is amazing. Everybody needs to see that. Everybody needs to listen to that. Post the hell out of that. Please share, share, share. Because after people see that, they're going to want you to come talk to their organizations. And that was so validating to me, to have person after person say some variation on that message.
Mm.
So, and also there was somebody in the room who came up to me and said, I'd like to improve my speaking skills. Do you think this is something I could do?
Mhm.
I said, of course you can, because let's bring some to Nashville, or from Nashville to Phoenix. Let's do it here in Phoenix. And so we've got a little groundswell moving. Maybe we should have a Wen Stories in Phoenix, Lisa.
Well, you
I'm
and
just
I
trying to get
already
you to
had a
come visit
little
me.
bit of a conversation about that. So you never know. You never know. That could happen in 2027. Just saying. Um, yeah,
We'll talk out the details later. But
exactly.
that's your little teaser for our podcast. How about
I
that?
love it. Well, and what that says about you, though, Wendy, is, and you even said this with what you did having your live premiere, you broke the mold. And that is something that you have continuously done through the years that I've known you. But that's part of what you shared in your Wen story. It's just how you approach life, because you do it authentically and you do it in a way that resonates with you, which ultimately resonates with others. And there's something so beautiful about that. So, if you could sum up your Wen Stories experience in, I won't say one word, but perhaps one sentence, what would you say?
One sentence. Well, my first thought was actually just do it,
No?
because it is so transformative.
Mm,
And to see yourself differently and present yourself to the world differently, it has so much value that I think everybody should do it. I don't think there's anyone, the more afraid you are, the more likely you are a good candidate.
mm, I love that. It was beautiful working together as you crafted your story, and with the cohort that we had too, because I think the beauty of the cohort is it's not just you taking feedback, you also have the opportunity to provide feedback to others. And I know that some of the feedback that you provided to somebody else that was in the cohort actually changed the entire opening of their story. And what an opportunity for that too. Did you find that the cohort piece also valuable in the creation of your work?
Anytime you form a new community, you get better better sense of yourself.
Mm,
Working in a void, yes, you can achieve a lot. Obviously, my podcasts are solo messages, and I frequently develop them on my own, and I have a producer who finishes them and puts them up on the internet. But that's just my internal voices forming things.
mhm,
And it was so delightful to be in a time and space where on a weekly basis I was getting together with others and getting to see how other people do it and learn from that, and yes, provide feedback, and also hear their perception of what I'm doing, because all too often you think you know what you're saying and it makes perfect sense to you because you know, but somebody else doesn't hear it right. I remember years ago, somebody was talking about a story. They'd said in an email, I resent it. They had resent the email. But what the person who read it saw was, I resent it.
Oh, goodness.
And there was a huge rift that formed until they got back to the nut and figured out where the breakdown in communication had happened.
Mm.
So there are times we need to have someone else's opinion of what we're doing, just so we can go, oh, that wasn't as clear as I thought it was.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Well, Wendy, congratulations on your premiere, on your When story, and obviously the message that you are bringing out into the world. You are changing lives through your podcast and your speaking, and I'm so excited to see what you do next. And I just, it's been my absolute pleasure to talk with you today, but also to work with you and work together over these last 8, 9, 10 weeks together. But I'm just so thrilled for you. And for everybody listening, stay tuned for Wonder Wendy's When story coming up next.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
When everything changed, I was in the living room. There was a couch, an overstuffed chair, a coffee table. In the corner, there was a rocking chair, just perfect for rocking a baby. In front of the window, a carpeted cat tower where the cat could lounge in the sun, keeping an eye on her people and the birds in the yard. A perfectly ordinary living room, my living room. I was 31 years old, and I just told my husband of 10 years that I was filing for divorce. He stormed out of the room. And as he headed down that hallway, I remembered something that in all the planning I'd been doing for that moment, I'd forgotten. He owns a gun. He was heading down that hallway, and at the end of the hall was the room where he kept his gun. I sat in that overstuffed chair. The house was a storm, energy was shifting, footsteps were moving, but I was sitting in the eye of that storm, more calmly than I could have ever expected. I realized that if he came back with that gun, it was simply all going to be over. And in that moment, that strangely quiet moment, I was changed forever. Because I realized that death had lost its sting. Death is just an ending. I was more afraid of being stuck. I was more afraid of not living my life fully. And from that moment on, death couldn't scare me. And from then on, I could say, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to die. In that moment, I discovered a power, not certainty, not comfort, but a power that I could control my own reaction to a situation. I could slow time. I was no longer a sapling bending in the breeze. I had grown into my fullness as a tree that could withstand any storm, a tree that could stop a truck. But trees don't grow overnight. They come from really small seeds. Acorns turn into oaks. Those little maple whirligigs, they turn into great maple trees. So many different types of little seeds that turn into great trees. And the seed for this tree was planted years before by my parents. Now, my parents are what we call the greatest generation. They lived through the Depression with scarcity. My father fought in the Second World War while my mom stayed at home and watched her life change as well. And they planted those inspirations in me. I learned to make do with the littlest things. I learned to survive through all the storms because of the seed. they planted years before. So after that divorce, it was time for me to rebuild. But here's something else about trees. My dad taught me a lot about trees. He would take me out in the woods. He was a university professor and therefore by definition an academic, but he was a farm boy at heart. And he would take me out in the woods, and even though I'm not really a nature girl, like really not a nature girl, I love my flush toilets. He would take me out there and I learned about the trees and how they reacted to the wind and how things grew and how you learned from nature. He was great. Oh, and while he kept me grounded, my mother was everlasting sunshine. My mother taught me to dream. She taught me that I was capable of anything I set my mind to. And with her love around me, I almost believed I could. So I was both grounded and a dreamer. I had their tenacious roots, and I was going to survive this divorce. And that wasn't easy because I'd written a script when I was 6 years old and went to my sister's wedding. At the age of 6, my eldest sister got married, and you see the perfect white dress, you see the lovingly arranged flowers. It's magic. And once you do that, it's happily ever after, right? Well, my happily ever after was on fire. It was gone. But I was going to rebuild because trees have rings. That's something else my dad taught me. When you go out and you see the stump of a tree, you'll see concentric circles. And each one of those circles, or rings as they are called by people who study trees, are a year in the life of that tree. When the rings are narrow, it's a tough year. It didn't grow very much. When the rings are thick, it was a great year. Lots of water, lots of sunshine, lots of nutrients. We as people go through the same thing. Rings of growth. Every year, some are thin, some are thick. So here was one of my tough years, getting divorced, rebuilding my life. My divorce attorney even said, well, you'll be lucky to get a job as a shop girl. It was 1998, people, and he's telling me I'm going to be lucky to be a shop girl? I had a college degree. I had worked in the professional world, and I was being told I was less than because I was a divorced woman. Well, if anyone was going to underestimate me, it wasn't going to be me. So I rebuilt. I got a job, yes, as a secretary, because in 1998, we were still being very narrowly pigeonholed into a certain slice of job. But it was a permanent position, and I had benefits, and I could support my daughter and myself. And with the help of my parents, we put a deposit on a house, and we had a home. And each month, by the skin of our teeth, I paid the bills. Now, I will tell you, there were days I was back in that chair, not sure if I'd make it, not sure if I could do it, and those were the thin ring times. But I did make it, and I climbed into management. My achievements were recognized at corporate headquarters. I was living the dream. I remarried. I had another daughter. Everything's perfect, right? There's always another storm. There's always another hallway moment. And it happened to me in the form of sexual harassment. One of those people from corporate who was coming to see what I was doing violated my personal boundaries in a sexual way. Sexual harassment ripped me to shreds. And I tried to ignore it because I wanted to keep my perfect life. But within a couple months, I was suffering what I found out later was post-traumatic stress disorder. I couldn't finish thoughts. I was losing control of my life. So I went into therapy, and with the help of that therapist, I reported that gentleman, and he was dealt with by corporate. Another job shift, and in that therapy, I discovered that something else had to change. So at 41, I was getting divorced for a second time. And once again, I went through that weird shift, but I'm a tree and I'm going to keep growing even when the rings are thin. Would you believe it? I fell in love again. I got married again. I'm nuts, right? Relationships are hard. But I kept growing. I kept changing. And guess what? We're going to celebrate our 17th wedding anniversary this summer. So there is hope in the future for those of you who are recidivists like me. And that too wasn't always easy. There were a few storms in there. A few years in our marriage, he retired, and that's a change of identity. My mother died. I lost that everlasting light that had guided me through so much of my life. And then we had teenage daughters at the same time. And if you know what I mean about teenage daughters. Whether you've been one or you've had one, you know about teenage daughters. And miracle of miracles, I found out a couple of years later, while I was going through all that fog and all that turmoil, apparently I was also going through menopause. Yay! So at 51, we'd made it through those storms. I'd made it through menopause, and I still have most of my sanity most days. And it was right about that time that we went to Arizona. We were living in Vermont, where I got to know the trees really well. And after way too many snowstorms, we said, how about getting a winter house in Arizona? Pretty quickly, we were spending most of our year in Arizona. My entire life was uprooted. And not only that, I'm a chameleon. I'm a person who blends in. So most of my life, I've been defined by being somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, or my job, or somebody's mom. And we were now in Arizona, fresh start. No job definitions, no children in the house. I didn't know who the heck I was. And for a while, I lived into that. I biked to the grocery store almost every day. I made fresh meals almost every night. I know this may sound idyllic, but frankly, I got bored. And I started wanting more. And that's when I started what I call my year of yes. If I got an invitation and my schedule and my budget allowed, yes, I'm going. If I had fun, I'll go again. If I didn't have fun, no thank you. And I got to make the choices. It was great. By the end of that year, I was on 2 boards, and I had a community. I had places to be several times a week. It was delightful. Oh, and I even started modeling. A plus-size dinosaur in a world populated by women under 30 wearing single-digit sizes. Now, bear in mind, I weighed 30 pounds more than I do today. And I was still out there on the runway, rocking it. And it was fun. It was an excuse to be glamorous. I mean, an excuse to put on makeup. Sometimes you need an excuse to put on your lipstick and get out of the house. And I was doing it. I went to audition for an agency. And they wanted to know the people they were bringing into their modeling crew. And the interviewer looked at me and said, "So what do you do?" Now that's a really challenging question when you're retired. What do you do? I gave it a quick second of thought, and this just came out of my mouth. I'm living the wonderful bucket list life. And the interviewer grinned from ear to ear, and he looked at me and said, "Write that down." He knew what it took me a few more minutes to realize, that that was now my calling, living a wonderful bucket list life. And that's not about a list of things you do before you die. Because guess what? You are going to die whether you plan for it or not. This is about a list of things you're going to do that is going to fill your life, that is going to give your life meaning. It's an ever-growing list. Much to my husband's chagrin. "Oh, that looks fun, let's do that." It's exhausting for him. Sometimes it's exhausting for me too, but it's fun. It gives life meaning. And at first I was doing it just for me. It was fun. But then I went to tea with a friend, and she was my peer, about the same age. She says, now, Wendy, can you explain this to me? Most women of our age are seeing their lives get smaller. And I'm watching yours get bigger. Can you teach other women to do that? I don't know. Can I? Is that possible? So for a little while, I just kind of started putting everything onto my social media. Yes, I'm living life large. This is me without makeup. This is me with makeup. This is me on the runway. This is me before the runway. Whatever it might be. But I was living by example. But even then, I knew there had to be something more. Maybe that's why I'm called Wonder Wendy. Maybe I'm finally manifesting the destiny of why my husband nicknamed me Wonder Wendy. Now, I know when he did it, and I'm looking at him, he was saying Wonder Woman. And I love Linda Carter, so I will take that as a huge compliment, right? But over the years, more and more friends started calling me Wonder Wendy. And as I started branding my experience with a wonderful bucket list life, I realized Wonder Wendy wasn't an offshoot of Wonder Woman. She is her own superhero. She is her own person with her own traits and strengths and characters. And yeah, I'm having an influence on other women and people around me. So it struck me that what I needed to do to help teach other women was what I've now coined open-sourced programming for the human mind. Now, for those of you who haven't been in a room full of software engineers, open-source programming is software created by software engineers and put into the universe for free, saying, take this and run with it and make the world a better place. Please take what I've created and take it to the next level. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to not only live my best life and share the stories of my life, I want to help others take that lesson, take that open source programming for the human mind, and make their lives better and fuller. It's exciting. It's not something you can buy. It's not something you can put on your phone. It's just stories. But stories are important. And right about that time, I met a podcast producer. I'll tell you honestly, I'd never listened to a podcast at that point in my life. Most of my generation hasn't. When I say my generation, I'm turning 60 next month. There are a lot of us who've never listened to that form of entertainment. But as I talked to her, I said, tell me about this podcast thing, and this is what I do. And she said, you've got a podcast. Okay, let's do a podcast. And I thought I'd do exactly what everybody else does. I'm going to go find amazing women, and Lord knows there's enough of you in this room. I could do a year of episodes, just this room alone. But before I could get to that first episode, I needed a couple things. First, I needed a title. And I'm talking to another friend, this time maybe over a bottle or two of wine. And I said, oh my God, why am I doing this? Who's going to listen to me? I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm muddling along. I'm married 3 times. I've pissed off my daughters. My daughters have pissed me off. I've made so many mistakes. Who am I to have a podcast? I am an imperfect prophet. You know what that girlfriend did? Boop, boop. Write that down. It seems to be a recurring theme in my life. Wendy, you just said something smart. Listen to it. Write it down. So my podcast is called The Imperfect Prophet. Prophet. Nothing to do with money, per se. It's more about seeing the world differently, connecting the dots, creating a message that people can use. Again, that open source programming for the human mind. Each episode, which, again, I thought I was going to interview somebody, but before I could get to that first episode, my podcast producer said, okay, I'd like to have some content in the can so that if your guest doesn't show up, we have something to show, because you're going to drop every week. And I went, oh, I am? Okay. So she said, record a solo episode. Okay. I did. I talked for about 16 minutes, told a story, learned a lesson from that story, and shared a message of how you can use it. My producer listened to it and said, great, do another one. Okay. I did it again. I did it again. I did it again. I have yet to interview anybody on my podcast. And last Sunday, we dropped our 88th episode. So it's going along pretty well. But I won't tell you it's all been positive. I won't tell you it's all been easy. I haven't made a single dollar off this. That's the joy of open source programming. I'm putting a message out there. I'm hiring coaches. I'm hiring producers. I've bought equipment. I'm investing my time and my energy. And every time I think, again, who am I to be doing this? Who's listening? What's going on? I get a message. Now, my prime demographic is generally women 40 to 65 going through a lot of stuff. We'll use a polite word right now. And that is what I consider my prime demographic. But really recently, I got a message from a young man who is having a gender identity crisis. He's in his 20s. He is definitely not my demographic. But he sent me a message saying, thank you for your podcast episode. I felt heard. I felt more understood than I have been by my own family. Oh, that was a Kleenex moment. I will tell you, I'm surprised I'm not crying now just talking about it. But that's when I realized what I'm doing matters. That telling these stories and helping people through their everyday challenges matters. It's important. And I've heard from other listeners who say very similar things. I felt heard. I felt seen. What you said gave me the strength to get through something, to stay or to leave. It matters that we share our stories because those are those little tree seeds. And each one has the potential to grow into something mighty. Now, if you're thinking, I don't want my life to get smaller, good. Because I want you to feel that way. I don't want to see anyone's life shrink. I'm so tired of talking to queen-agers, women my age, who when I ask them what they do, tell me what they used to do. Tell me who they're married to. They tell me about their children. They tell me about their grandchildren. And not that those aren't lovely things. I have a lovely husband. I have lovely grandchildren. I have lovely children. And I can talk about them ad infinitum. But I want to hear what you're doing. I want to hear what turned you on this morning, whether it was the sunrise, a perfect cup of coffee, walking your dog, or a book you read. And I also want to know, you have all these years behind you. You've learned lessons. You are an amazing human being, whether you know it or not. And I mean that for every person in this room, regardless of their age or gender. And if you're not sharing what you've learned with somebody else, you are wasting the gifts that your God or goddess or whoever gave you. You are a tree that has a gift to share. Now, I'm just one tree. I am standing here strong, and I am providing shelter to some of the trees around me that are coming up. But if you listen to my podcast and take those stories with those messages and those lessons, and you spread those seeds far and wide, I'm no longer one tree. We together are a forest, building more forests. And if there's one thing we know about forests, they create oxygen. They make the world a better place. And forests together change the world for the better. So please join me in the wonderful bucket list life.
Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changes.